Welcome to the Change of Him podcast. My name is Gerard Uselli. This is episode 43. This is a week where we just keep on rolling with so much change that so many people, all walks of life, have embraced. And it has just been compelling to see so much perspective and the amount of perception that people go through in a very different way. So, this guest is no exception to the rule and a Staten Islander himself. This person's name is Nicholas Ferraro. Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So something that I would love to ask, especially that it's a kind of like a first question that I ask all of my guests, is what your childhood was like growing up.
My childhood was, I would say, fairly average, to be
There we
honest with you.
go.
It was fairly average. You know, have good parents. They definitely, taught me a lot of things that have shaped me into the man I am, right now, today. I mean, played baseball, basketball as a kid, getting dirty in the street.
There we
Uh,
go. What
you know,
position do you play in basketball? I used to play a lot too.
I was a small forward.
Oh, okay,
Small
awesome.
forward. Yeah, I played small forward. Yeah, played small forward, basketball and baseball. I played right field. Well, actually, I was all over the place. I played right field. I played first base. I was like the utility guy. I played wherever they
Utility
needed
guy.
me. Yeah, I was a utility guy. Yeah.
So something that I've had a hot take on since I've started the Change of Him podcast. For anyone who on Staten Island who's played sports, I always will express this opinion. Don't you feel like when you're playing sports around here that the parents will always take it twice as seriously as you do?
Oh yeah, of course. They're living vicariously through their children. I guess you could say. In
There's
a
been
way.
I'll never forget this. I was playing baseball one time. It was a pretty heated playoff game. I'm about 12, 13. All I
Mhm.
wanted to do was get something from the Meal Mobile in Great Kills at that
Yeah.
baseball park or whatever. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, look, I just want to have a good time, be with my friends. I'll never forget this. Even for my mom, typically not a competitive person, she was just like, no, you have to stay in this right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh boy, we'll
Yeah.
talk about a whirlwind this is.
Yeah. No, it was definitely fun playing. I remember one time it was I don't it was Babe Ruth. I had to be maybe 15, 16. It was in the summer. It was the summer league and it was hot out. Really, really hot. And we were short guys. Okay.
Got it.
I was the eighth guy. Okay. And we could play. If I got there, we could play. I was sick. I had like 101 fever.
Ooh,
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And of course they needed a catcher. So I went to the game. I put the equipment on, and I'm sick. I'm like, I can't believe I'm catching right now.
yeah.
And it was about to thunderstorm, and we were about maybe 3 or 4 innings in, and the power went out on the field. The transformer blew. I was like, I was
That is
like, yes.
crazy.
I took the mask
But
off. I
still
took
though,
the.
yeah.
I'm like, Dad, let's go. We're out of here. I didn't feel well, and we went home.
You
But
probably felt like you won the championship that day.
oh,
And
I
you
was
just
so
wanted to
happy. I
go
was like,
home.
thank God. Yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
So, kind of to fast forward a little bit in this regard, tell me about the first time you wanted to be a teacher.
Uh, Truth be told, I didn't want to be a teacher actually.
Oh, that's interesting because I'm in the same
Yeah,
ropes right now, trying to be a teacher
yeah.
too. I had a different
It's
sense of
actually
career.
it's a really funny story. So, you know, and I tell this story to my students because I think it's actually really important for them to understand that you don't go to college to, I don't want to say get a job, right? But you want to go to college to learn. It's school, right?
Right.
So you're gonna, you get to you graduate high school and you kind of start to, to discover what you're interested in, right? In
Yeah.
learning. And after you complete your degree and you have a good foundation in what you wanted to learn, what you specialize in, then you'll find a job, right? And I think I did that about maybe 10 times. I had no idea. I,
Interesting.
I jumped so many. I did electrical engineering. I did architecture. I did so many majors, right, in college. So finally, I landed on a biology degree. That's why I studied biology. As a kid, I always was interested in overturning rocks and looking for little salamanders and frogs when I would go to Pennsylvania to my grandparents' Pennsylvania house. So I was always into that, and I said, you know what, I think I want to go to medical school like every other person who decides to major in biology. Um, then I wound up going for a master's in biotech,
Yep.
and at that point I was like about 24, 25, and I've been working in the restaurant for 15 years. Right, I worked at Lento's on New Up Lane.
Oh,
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah,
Wow.
I worked at Cafe Del Mondo. I worked at Doc's Clam Bar, Nucci's South, Nucci's North. Uh, I worked at Campagna of Brooklyn, Campagna of Richmond Avenue, and then my last restaurant was DeLuca's, in Italian restaurant in Tottenville. Um, but prior to that, in Campagna. It was 2015, and I had asked my mentor, who was guiding me through my thesis, my master's thesis, and I said, "Can I teach at the college, at the university level? Can I teach the college?" 'Cause I was doing a master's at CSI, and they said, "You can. You have to complete your master's before you can teach." And I said, "Okay, fine." I get an email from him 2 weeks later, and he says, "Hey, do you want to teach chemistry at St. Joseph by the Sea High School?" And I said, "Sure. All right, fine." He said, "Contact this number." So it was the vice principal calls me, and she says, "Hey, would you want to teach chemistry?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not? Absolutely." Because I didn't want to work in the restaurant anymore. I had all this knowledge, this science knowledge, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything with it. I need to do something with it. So it kind of fell into my lap, and I've been doing it for the past 6 years, and it's great. I love teaching science. Is probably one of the, like, how could I say this? The best things, I guess the best thing I've done in my life is teaching science.
I'm gonna say something too. So, kind of in a sense of the fundamentals of doing science, and I'm talking about when we all did our science experiments at like
Mhm.
7 to 10 years old. Now that you're a professional teaching it yourself, what do you care more about as far as like any sort of experimentation? Do you care about more of the questioning and the hypothesis, or solving it by the conclusion?
Um, so what I try to convey to my students is the experimentation, right? And your hypothesis, okay? It should be, or at least your experimentation, right, should be unbiased,
Yep.
right? As humans, we come to the table with bias, right? The hypothesis, you think this is going to happen, right? Or this may not happen, right? So what you're going to do is set up experiments that are going to support or not support either the hypotheses, right?
Got it.
And you're going to reject the ones that don't, and accept the hypothesis that your experimentation supports. Okay, but you want to be as unbiased as possible, right? That's what I try to teach to my students. Don't come with a preconceived idea. Otherwise, you'll be chasing chasing your tail, going down a rabbit hole. Oh, why am I getting this result? And, well, why did I get this result? And you wind up actually so far away from the actual endpoint you want to come to, in the experiment.
Definitely. And in the regard of actually seeing students do these experiments themselves, was there ever a very memorable like time as far as a student blowing you away with his or her presentation?
Um, I'll be honest, I can't recall, but what I can say as a teacher, right? Those when you're teaching and you kind of you showing them a difficult, it's kind of trying to teach them a difficult topic, and you have these blank faces, and then all of a sudden you get one kid who's like, "Oh, I get it," and all of a sudden, like, the eyes widen, you're like,
Yeah.
she gets it or he gets it. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the things that I remember.
Got it.
That light bulb goes off and you're like, and then all of a sudden, you know, they start to explain it to everybody else. Those are the things that I tend to remember.
No, fair enough. And I guess it also leads to a point where I'm going to say this generally as a DOE practicing standard that I've been observing is
Hmm.
that they ideally want to see students lead in a classroom and trying to
Yeah.
see that more come into fruition in itself. And I
Hmm.
feel like you as a facilitator, if you're able to convey that for a student to feel inspired and lead, not only do you feel like you've done your job, you feel like you're able to hopefully repeat that as students inspire others in the classroom.
Hmm. Right.
So, kind of to step it back just a little bit in terms of science itself, tell me a little bit about your journey as far as how you really got into science, or if it was something that was a little bit later on in your life.
It definitely was something that was a little bit later on in my life, that I have to say. I was always good at science. I was always very interested, especially in biology. Truth be told, I mean, I teach chemistry. I teach biology as well. I teach biology at the College of Staten Island. I teach chemistry and biology at high school. But I started teaching chemistry, and to be honest, in high school, I hated chemistry. I hated it.
Hmm.
I think everybody hates chemistry. Okay. And
Yeah.
I tell my students that all the time. And they're like, well, you teach chemistry now. I'm like, well, remember, things that you didn't like when you were younger, right? You can change as you get older, right? And you can, hone skills that you didn't know that you had, right? When you were in high school, things change. Um, um, but yeah, I was always interested in biology, and my mistake why I went through so many majors in college and finally ended on biology was that I wasn't looking for what I was interested. I was looking for what could make me money,
Right.
you know. And now that I'm a teacher, right, and we all know, teachers don't really we don't make fantastic salaries, okay, but I am fulfilled in what I'm doing, right? I'm not really worried about the paycheck. I'm more interested in, or I'm more thinking about on the way to work. I'm talking, okay, how am I going to explain this? What kind of real world scenario can I bring into the classroom to really hit this topic home, these students? And then I think about, all right, which one of my students are the ones who I'm going to have to really focus a little more, right? This is going to be a tough topic. So should I teach it a little bit and then assign them group work and then really focus on the kids that need some help? Who am I going to pair them up with? Stuff like that. So I think that having that foundation in science and then being able to really try to impart that knowledge onto them is probably one of the thing that makes me fulfilled in my job.
Do you have a favorite scientist?
Do I have a favorite scientist? Well, anyone who knows me and has been, looking at my Facebook page knows that I'm a big fan of Fauci. I'm a big fan of
Definitely.
Dr. Fauci, and a lot of people hate Dr. Fauci. They can't stand the guy. But yeah, I love Fauci. But honestly, I never even really heard of him until the pandemic, hit last
Fauci's
March.
got an interesting history because I first heard about Fauci in the swine flu pandemic when that was
Okay.
going on. And he's just always been a compelling figure, sometimes polarizing, especially in the last year with the pandemic going on,
Yeah.
just based on how people follow the science, and then some things kind of get misinterpreted for better or worse in this case. But I will
Correct.
give
Yeah.
Fauci this: somebody with over 35 years experience, and if not more, in the sense of like him starting out himself, it does speak volumes to his credibility and the amount of merit in serving in so many different presidencies himself.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I agree. 100%.
So kind of to bring it a little bit like in the present for yourself. So as you were talking about teaching at St. Joseph's by the Sea and then also teaching at CSI, what's it like to be a lecturer like in a college setting? What did that feel like for you before the pandemic?
I was excited when I first got the position. Um, being able to, teaching biology, teaching high school students, you kind of have to, you can't you can't convey the information at a level that is beyond them, right? You have to cater to your audience. Okay. So when you're at the college level, it's kind of like, not that you have free reign in doing that, but you have the opportunity to really go into detail in the science, which is what I love, right? I think that's the most important thing, because when you talk about biology, right, you're really talking about the things that you can't see with the naked eye, right? You're talking about a whole universe, a whole reality, right, that goes on within the billions of cells in our bodies and all the other organisms on the planet, and it's like you have that freedom a little bit, of course you have to stay within the confines of the curriculum, um, but that's what I love about teaching at the college level. The other thing I love teaching about at the college level is the students, right? A lot of the students that I have are actually older individuals who have children, right? Who aren't going to college, right out of high school, for themselves. They're doing it not only for themselves, but they're doing it for their children,
Right.
right? And they're very determined. They ask a lot of questions. They make sure that, to write down what's going to be on the test and emailing you and asking for help. It's I love to see the motivation and the determination in those types of students. So that's one of the things I really enjoy teaching at the college.
I think it's kind of a reflection as well that there's a misconception in life that school only goes till you're 22 years old. And it's kind
Oh
of like
yeah,
the same thing.
absolutely, yeah,
And to reverse
100%,
that as
yeah.
well, like being that you're 18, you're old enough to vote and go to the army and stuff like that. I just did like a switch on two different stereotypes that we all kind of like assume is in our nature.
Mhm.
But when you see things a little bit more reversed and a little bit more left field, as far as seeing like a 30 to 40-year-old student that you're working with at that point, it does get inspiring that anyone is as capable of being a great student as they are a great teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to say this as well, kind of to fast forward a little bit into how you pivot. So, like, what was it like to pivot as a teacher in your experience in the pandemic?
Um, in terms of like transitioning to remote learning and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
let's go on that a little bit first.
Okay. Well, we at the high school we work with the iPads, and we throughout the past, I've been working it for 5 years now. We've had these things called virtual days. So we would actually do pre-recorded lectures. So on a snow day, when it snowed and New York City public schools were closed, we would stay open, but we would be open virtually. So
Got
we would make these pre-recorded videos using the iPad, and then we'd upload it to the at the time we had Blackboard, and then we had Canvas, right? And using the iPad, it was easy. It was an easy transition to uh, doing that type of teaching, right? But doing it live. So it's
fair
like we've
enough.
almost been really doing it for a while, So the transition really wasn't that difficult. The only hard part about it was the lack of communication with the students. Not, I shouldn't say communication. It was the lack of interaction with the students.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it.
It was very difficult, to really get them to, be engaged. So that was probably the hardest part. You really had to be more enthusiastic. You had to kind of be really loud in their face. Well, in their face, through audio. So that was really, in my opinion, the most difficult part. With respect to the teaching remotely at the college, it was pretty much the same. Those who
Yeah.
participated, and those who didn't attend, or didn't want to participate, they didn't. I didn't see any real difference. But in the high school, there was definitely trying to get them engaged was difficult.
I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit, kind of going a little out of the classroom on this next question. So, everyone's got their own opinion about the
Mhm.
vaccines that are out and distributed to the United States at this point. We all have anecdotal evidence on certain things. Some
Mhm.
things kind of can be misconstrued as far as if they are good or if not. What is your opinion on the COVID-19 vaccines?
My opinion is that and I was just talking with my students about this morning. The COVID-19 vaccines are probably the safest vaccines ever developed um, in vaccine history. Okay. And the reason for that is they're not putting, with the exception of Johnson and Johnson, right, which is just using the virus as a vector, right, to
Yeah,
deliver the mRNA to the cells. The Moderna and the Pfizer are not viral vaccines. You're not putting an attenuated, which is a weakened virus, or an inactivated virus into the body of into people. Okay, you're using lipid nanoparticles to deliver the mRNA, the instructional code to make the spike protein of the coronavirus, which your body will then produce an immune response by developing antibodies against that protein, right? So the thing with if you look at polio vaccine, right? There are two types of vaccines. There's the inactivated polio vaccine, the IPV, and the OPV, the oral polio vaccine. The oral polio vaccine is a weakened form of the virus, right? The flu vaccine is an attenuated virus, weakened form of the virus. And the problem with these vaccines, and it's not a major problem, but these weakened forms can actually revert back to wild type, which is the virulent virus. It can cause infection, right? So sometimes you hear people, oh, I never got the flu, I got the flu shot, and I got the flu, right? You might have had a virus that reverted back to wild type and caused infection. So with these vaccines, that won't happen, right? And it's actually revolutionary, especially with respect to with respect to J&J, where I think that you're going to see down the road, right, a viral vector being used to cure certain diseases, right?
which has
Certain
been debated
genetic
for cancer
disorders.
right now.
Exactly. That's what you're going to see. And what I can understand is that everyone is kind of like, hold on a second. What are the long-term effects of these vaccines? And my response to them is this: what are the long-term effects of the coronavirus? Right? You look at HIV, and HIV causes an acute flu-like infection, and then the person feels fine. 10 years later, they develop AIDS, right? Hepatitis C can cause hepatocellular carcinoma. Hepatitis B, hepatitis, right? Epstein-Barr virus, right, can cause a slew of cancers. Okay, so these viruses can cause issues down the line, right? 5, 10, 15 years later. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. We have to look at vaccine history, and of course, the vaccine injury is a real thing. That is a real thing that does exist. It's not a black and white thing on and off, right? It's going to work for you. It's not. People, there can be vaccine injury, but statistically, it shows that vaccines are safe for the vast majority of people. And if you can take it, and your doctor advises you and says you should take it, you should take the vaccine.
Yeah. Hey, look, I think it's very admirable that you have people who will advocate for it, and the efficacy rate of Pfizer and
Mm,
Moderna does speak for
yeah.
itself. I don't know if you ever saw the TED talk as far as the MRA to mRNA technology that came out about 7 years ago. Just a
Yeah, it's not new tech.
yeah, it's so like that development has been going on
Mhm.
for quite some time. So like when people tell you that they think that's new, like what do you say to that?
It's not. It's not new technology. It's been used for quite some time, right? just because you haven't heard of it, it's not a mainstream. I mean, the layperson may not even know what mRNA is,
Right.
right? They might not even have a clue, right? And you tend to fear the things that you don't know and you can't see, right? So, I mean, mRNA technology is used in laboratories all over the place. You could the micro inject organisms with mRNA. There's so much stuff that you can do with it. Um, so that's my response to them. It's been around. You could do a simple Google search, type in mRNA experiments. So as simple as that. Type it into the Google Scholar, and you'll get a bunch of hits. This isn't new stuff, and we have to look at the long-term effects of the virus. Any long-term effects that you would think that you would find accompanied with the vaccine, you would have seen already within the trials.
Yeah, I definitely like to say that that's a rationale for sure. And kind of in the sense of you being a teacher now, having a couple positions and seeing how you've adapted yourself throughout a pandemic at this point in your life, and this is my final question that I ask everyone else, what is the biggest change you want to see for yourself?
The biggest change I want to see for myself, um, over the course of the past year, I tend to get a little heated,
Right.
right? I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about what I know, right? And I get kind of upset when people are not open to listening, right? So one of the biggest things that I've learned over the course of the year is that not every battle is meant to be won, not every battle is meant to be fought, right? And you cannot convince somebody who has such a strong conviction in their personal belief. You could lay down all the facts, right? If they don't want to believe it, they're not going to. And you should not
Mhm.
work yourself up or get upset, okay, if they're not willing to be open to the discussion. So I've learned that you have to take a few steps to the left or to the right or to the back, wherever you are, and say, hey, listen, is this really worth the time, you know, getting upset and trying to convince people that this is real, this coronavirus, this is something to take precaution. Sometimes it is and sometimes it's not, but I've learned that you need to really take a step back, not get so upset, not run away with your passions, and really distance yourself from the emotion, and things get a little bit better.
Well, as a final point on what you just said, I think it's such an important thing for people to have an understanding. If they want to see change, they have to start with themselves before they go to anyone else. And that's
Yeah.
just an inevitability of life, because the change within anybody is not so much how much forward you can go.
Hmm.
There's more of that restraint that can also be
Yeah,
just as impactful.
absolutely.
And in that case, like, whether it's you potentially having that combativeness with someone else, for you to walk away from it can possibly make you not so much the better person, but the bigger person in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, it helps you. Self-evaluation is the most important thing. Self-evaluate, is this helping me in the moment? If it's not, don't do it anymore. you
Absolutely.
know
So,
yeah.
nonetheless, this does conclude episode 43 for the Change of Him podcast. For those who want to check us out but have never had the chance to yet, you can please check out the Change of Him podcast at Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Nick, thank you very much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your night.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.